And morning. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish.
Well, hi there. Hello, Joey. Oh, dear. Good morning, everybody. I cannot hear you. Joey's silent this morning, and she ain't got it yet. Nothing, my dear. All right. We'll try it again. Shall we go back to the beginning? Nah. We'll just carry on from here. Karuna Karen, hello. Monster Fish Gal. Chevy Danican. George Vicarion. Do you think pea puffers would be a good choice for a self-sustaining ecosystem? That's a really good one. Pea puffers for self-sustaining. I guess. I mean, the thing about pea puffers, how are we?
Right. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good. We got you now.
Okay. I got a green light. It says I'm on.
So, Joey shaved this morning. I don't know if anybody noticed.
I said I had to shave earlier.
You did, right. For those of you not in the know, she appeared on Catfish Terry last night with a full Appalachian beard. It was rather garish, actually. I was thinking of a nicer word, but that one sprang to mind. Let's see. Facebook user says it's snowing here in Ohio. Must be nice there. Facebook user, if you will click on the link and go to StreamYard, they will identify you and your name will be posted in the chat. So we know who you are. But welcome in any case. Nice to have you with us. Kareen. Yeah, you can, there is a way, Kareen, for you to to click on the StreamYard. There should be a StreamYard tab. If you click on that, it'll identify you, and then it simply picks up your name. StreamYard. It should be in the link. Should be right there. StreamYard is the platform that we're streaming on. Anyway, nice to have you with us, Kareem.
Yeah. So should we
And
say some hello?
yes, what shall we want?
Yeah, go
Say
ahead. Say some hellos. Go ahead.
Yes, by all means. By all means. Ollie Wilcox, our Dragon Slayer and Leviathan Destroyer Fish Cow. Monster Fish Cow, right? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Ladessa Keltner. Hello, Ladessa. Chevy Fish, Monster Fish, Chevy Fish. What else? T-Bone. Hello, T-Bone. TJ. TJ's been over on Discord this morning. Lots of people on Discord having a good time, too. It's nice because they're able to post pictures. Eventually, we will set up Discord to be able to stream as well. So we will be doing that in fairly short order. We'll be doing this stream on Discord as well. So, and we've made we made an administrative decision about Discord. We were running into trouble with the waiting room, trying to control people coming in, because it was creating a kind of a double door that was effectively blocking the system. So we've removed that. Now you can go in, anyone can go in. You may go in undefined, however. We still have the prerogative when you get there of having a color, and the color designates your level of involvement. Most people are snook, and most of those are supporters here on other YouTube, Patreon, PayPal, or otherwise people who make regular super chats. So you can still, and we do certainly encourage supporting the channel. It is an enterprise after all, and one that we depend upon. We depend on the income from the channel to be able to survive. So we do deeply appreciate your support, and it is growing. It's very nice, and I may yet achieve financial independence in my life. One never knows. At 80, one never knows. I've never really tried. To be fair, there have been times in my life where I've had a great deal of income. Times during the shop where I've had a lot of income. But I've always kind of plowed it back into whatever I was doing. Never really took seriously creating a safety net for myself. So here I sit at 80 years old, walking the tightrope net free and loving it. Anyway.
So I'm going to say a few more hellos, and then we'll work into a couple questions. So I see world's smallest fish room in here, and I think you said fish.
We need to know what that's all about, don't we?
And Tisha's here, and Roman, and let's see. I know TJ's New Life is here. Bates and Genetics is here. Joshua, Tam Shepherd. And who else do we have? You see anybody on this? And Highest Learning's here.
Glass Fox, you said Stephanie.
Yeah, and Stephanie, and I know Don's here. And Daniel. Kenny's here. Kenny. Jada. Craig Broderick's here. Karina Karen, did you mention them? Chris Trapp.
Yeah, Corinne Karen. She's on Facebook. Nice,
Yeah.
Corinne. Good job.
And Thomas is here. Mr. D, CPD, Jay Olivers. I'm just working down quickly and scrolling. Broadcast Illusions.
Craig.
Tree 77, Falconry Fun, James Handy. A Fish is here, Dank Jinx.
Ooh.
I apologize if we are missing people. We're trying Roger, One Wanderer, and Michael Long. I'm scrolling. Brian's Community Tanks. Willie Beck. Nicole's here. Sunset Jam. You already mentioned T-Bone, I think. Eric's Journey. And I'm just scrolling down, and I do apologize if we've missed someone, but we tried to get most of you. Anyway, so because things do get a little bit confusing.
Yeah.
Did you say Jordan? Oh, and the Harry Woodson is
George Vackerlon.
yeah.
A good George friend here.
So how long did it take to shave the beard last night? Not long.
Do what?
Oh, Bason's asking me how long it took to shave the beard. I'm like, not long. Came right off. Got to get a little glue off, and then that was all good, you know.
What's a thing of beauty?
So
can you cut your volume back a little bit? It's just a little.
How's that?
That's better. Thank you.
Okay. So I think did we agree that if somebody may have already asked a question farther back in the chat, could you re-ask?
Yeah, here's what we're gonna do.
We're gonna try this.
Here's Hans Aquarium.
Yes.
Hans is our newest member. Welcome, Hans. Thank you so much. What we're gonna do is we're going to stick to the bottom of the chat. What that means is we're going to try to be in conversation with you as your comments are coming up. We're going to try not to go back and capture things from 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes ago. And in doing so, we should be able, we've done this once or twice successfully, and it's been a lot of fun because we've been able to have a real conversation with you in the chat. However, what that means is if I get on a rant about something and 50 comments scroll by, and then when I quit yammering and Joey is picking up on the current chat, we may well miss a comment you made that we would otherwise respond to. So we ask you simply, if you have a question or a concern or a comment that you really want us to hear, type it again. Just copy and paste it. And bring it up, and don't feel awkward about doing that, because that's really about the only way we have to be able to stay current. We either do that or we get lost going up and down the chat. That creates more confusion when we do that, because then we wind up duplicating ourselves or losing track of what's going on, or having to go back and try to find something. It's a mess, and it's not worth it. So treat the chat as a conversation. And we're the only ones, Joey and I up here are the only ones with ears. Nobody else has ears. Everybody else is experiencing the chat with their eyes. We're not doing that, if you will. Treat us as though we need to hear you by posting your comment again. If we don't pick it up after a minute or two, post it again. And you can keep on doing that. If you need to do it 3 or 4 times, That's fine. Well, I've been going on now for about 3 or 4 minutes, and I'm watching. There have been about 25 comments that have scrolled by. Joey has probably picked up
That's my
one or
struggle.
two. So, right. So let's go to you, Joey, and see what's going on.
I
World's
was going to say
smallest.
that is my struggle. Well, you see one?
I'm, look, I'm looking at 915, world's smallest fish room. He says,
Okay, we'll go.
I had sand substrate, plants struggling, but I took out the sand,
Mhm.
added some old gravel. I had then capped with sand again. Now the plants grow like weeds. So thanks for the tip. That's exactly right. Exactly right.
Right.
Um, by using the old gravel, you could have used dirt. Same difference. You created
Hmm.
you created a nutrition layer, a level of where there was nutrition from the old sand, the old gravel, and then the sand capped it, which keeps it down in the substrate. That's one of the 2 or 3 main functions. Another one is simply to anchor the plants, but there are more. But those are the basic ones. So yeah, good job with that. Excellent, James Handy. James Gene Campbell, you will have to add something to the tank that will cause ammonia, such as the little fish food, 1 or 2 fish, even a splash of non-sudsing household ammonia. He's talking about kickstarting a tank. If you do the dirted tank, you do not need to do anything to kickstart the system. It happens automatically. Um, if you don't do a dirted tank, the best way to deal with that is to put a couple of fish in the tank. By doing that, and then not feeding heavily, feeding very, very sparingly, you will create some ammonia, but the nitrates will be able to build up at a rate that will control them. Also, planting very heavily at the beginning. Now, the tiniest fish room made the comment he tried that without any nutrition and it didn't work. So, your substrate must have some kind of nutrition in it at the beginning. I strongly recommend using dirt. Topsoil is sufficient and adequate. You can add more to it if you like, and no more than 1 inch, and then cap it with 2 inches of sand. If you will do that, it will kickstart your system. You'll be able to have fish and plants growing in it immediately. Day 2. Day 1, you're setting it up. Day 2. Hardiest freshwater fish in the hobby. Oh boy, that's J Dog.
Okay,
Uh,
so all right, I'll wait on this other question.
he likes gouramis. Well, that's one everybody here ought to try to answer. What do you all consider to be the hardiest fish? What do you have, Joey? I'm sorry.
The hardiest fish?
Goldfish.
I mean, goldfish. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, really.
And then, I mean, for tropical, uh, probably. I mean, I'm just going on what I breathe. Tropical. I mean, I got to go with convict cichlids. Those things are like iron.
Oh, God knows. True
You know.
enough. What do you have for comments, questions, Joey?
Well, I had one from George Vachelon. He said, I heard you say my name twice and you thought it was a good question. So do you think pea puffers would be a good choice for a self-sustaining ecosystem?
That's kind of interesting. I want to say no. And the reason is they are voracious feeders, but they're tiny. And if you will, here's what you need to do. You need to, as you're setting the tank up, you need to add a good variety of biomass, of how do I want to say this, of microfauna, a good variety of microfauna. and microflora for that matter. But that means getting some good cultures going of microfauna, paramecium, all that sort of stuff. Putting worm like blackworm, feeding blackworm heavily, Daphne, putting Daphne in scuds, try to get those kinds of things and load the tank up with them uh, so that they are populous enough to be able to keep going with the predation that the pea puffers are gonna put on the pressure they're gonna put on the system. I would limit the number of pea puffers. Do no more than 4 or 5 in a like a 20 to a 20 gallon tank, 20 gallon base. 2 or 3 in a 10 gallon. Um, and then try to really pump the microfauna. Try to get that beefed up so that you can have a natural. If your goal is to have a natural tank, you're going to have to push the microfauna, the larger stuff like Daphne, scuds, blackworms, that sort of thing. You're going to have to push that really hard to be able to get it growing at a fast enough clip to stay ahead of the puffers.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly worth the effort. And I know you can be successful doing it. No question about that. It will work. Just control the number of pea puffers and try to get the microfauna out of control. You want to get it growing really heavily and strongly. And that means it has to eat. So you've got to consider that as well. A lot of leaf litter, mulch, that sort of stuff, vegetable matter, putting lettuce in there routinely will help. That's what all the microfauna eats. Don't do fish food. Do not use fish food to feed microfauna because it contains too much protein. It's going to wind up fouling the water. What else you got?
Well, we got a quick question, which is, a couple of people asking about either pre-made dirt mixtures or supplements. You sell a supplement that they can purchase on Get Gills, correct? To add to their dirt.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you go to Get Gills and go onto stores and search the Father Fish store, he does sell a bag of supplements to put in to the dirt mixture that you can make with your own dirt. And then Ladessa has a question. She says, how long does it take for a new sponge filter to be seeded? Did you hear that one?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, just making sure.
Trying to formulate an answer. It depends entirely on the tank you put it in. If it's a brand new filter in a brand new tank, right. it will take a week or two. If it's a brand new filter in an aged tank, it'll take a day or two. It's kind of what seeded really means is that there is some nitrifying bacteria in the system and some microfauna living in the filter. Some means a very little bit. It also means a great deal, but that grows and increases. So the whole idea is to get it started. The dirted tank gets it started. It just does it without any effort at all, particularly if you're adding plants to that brand new tank. And I recommend planting very heavily at the beginning. Day one, plant heavily, upwards of 70%. You can do it over a period of a couple of weeks, but don't not do it. You want to get the tank planted heavily early on. Um, Once you get the filter in there and get some other things happening, don't give the filter a second thought. It will take care of itself. The important thing is that you've got a life system to begin with. If you're dumping an inch of gravel and and raw water in a tank and throwing some fish in it, you're probably going to have a world of trouble. So I don't recommend that anyone do that, particularly a newbie who doesn't really have a lot of experience setting up tanks. I would rather you set up something that seems vastly more complex and difficult, but which in fact is enormously simple. Somebody made a comment a while back about people oohing and eyeing about how difficult it is to do dirted
I was
tanks.
just gonna say, yep.
Yeah, that was Smallest Fish Room made that comment. And it really is the simplest thing in the world. You put a little dirt in the bottom, you
Mm-hmm.
put sand on top, you put water in it without messing it up, plant plants, throw fish in, and you're good to go. Whether you have a filter or not, you're good to go. It's really the simplest thing in the world, but you have to have the right elements to begin with. If you don't have the right elements, nothing happens.
Yeah. Um,
Midnight Lobster. Wood can introduce mycelium. Is that beneficial to the fish? It's beneficial to the tank. The invertebrates will eat it, like shrimp, snails, and the like. Some fish will eat it, like algae eaters, otocinclus, and the like. But mainly, what it does is it helps to build the biological life in the system. And that's really what's critical. You have to think of the tank as a living organism. It is a living organism. So you start by putting life in it. You're not going to create life out of nothing. You're not going to you're not going to put gravel in the tank, water in it, throw some food and a fish in, and expect it to become a living organism. It won't. It'll struggle, and it'll struggle helplessly for a long period of time. You may luck out and make it in 6 months to a year. Chances are you're going to lose a lot of fish along the way. So start with something that works. Start with some dirt, cap it with sand, put water in, put a lot of plants in. Try to collect some litter or a dirty filter or something with mold from another tank. Put that in there. Go out in the ditch, pick up some mud, some leaf litter out of a ditch or a pond. Throw it in your tank. That'll do more good than anything else you can think of. Don't listen to these, oh my God, hysterics who say you have to have your tank, your head has to be absolutely sterile and absolutely clean or everything will get sick. That guarantees everything is going to get sick. Guarantees it. So don't do that. Be reasonable. Be sensible. Look at nature, how it works. There's nothing absolutely clean out there anywhere. Is there? Show me.
are you ready for a different question?
I'm ready.
Okay. Midnight Lobster says, I heard wood can introduce mycelium into the tank. Would you think it would be beneficial to the tank?
That's really interesting, isn't it? I just finished talking about that.
You did?
I did. Just finished. But maybe I didn't really repeat the question.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say, you didn't, I don't think you actually read the question, so it kind of went into what you said. Okay, yep.
Yeah, we're
Yes.
talking about mycelium.
Yeah,
Um,
It went
But
into it.
yeah, somebody else. Oh, yeah, somebody was saying they were at their fish store, and the guy said, "Don't put plants in for 2 months." That's a perfect example of a person who has no knowledge whatsoever about setting up an aquarium.
Right.
Because anybody who says that should be should be ignored resolutely and told so. Next time you see him, tell him, I have been told it is absolutely critical for me to ignore everything you say because you have no knowledge at all about keeping fish. Tell them that. Confront them with it because they're spouting off without knowing what they're talking about, and that's completely irresponsible. Get in their face about it. Really. Don't let ignorant people get away with trying to tout their brilliance when they haven't got any.
So, do you want to just hear a statement?
Please.
Okay. Nicholas Grawl says, I thought I took the easy route with gravel and fake plants. And then comes along Father Fish, and I almost cried and rebuilt the tank. It was set up for 30 days. Something didn't feel right. And I'm looking down below. And then it says, wow, my minnows are flaring and their fins are dancing, LOL. So I think he's happy with your way. Your way overall of the versus the gravel and the fake plants.
Ultramagnetic. Would you recommend to start a tank up with sand, even in tanks without plants? Well, I would recommend that you not have a tank without plants. There are always plants you can put in there, regardless of what you've got going on. I mean, there are low light plants if light's the issue. There are a lot of ways to do plants. Find a way to do plants because it's impossible. The gator is chiming in on the conversation here.
Mm-hmm.
It just makes it hard to understand. Yes, gator.
Well, he has something to say.
The question is obviously yes, but the answer is put plants in it. There's no reason that I can think of not to have plants. And I put plants in tanks where the fish were notorious plant eaters. And I still put plants in. I just put enough in they can't eat them all. And what I find is they'll select one or two and knock that one down and leave the rest alone. He's hard to let off. I need to close the door here.
Okay, you do that, and then I'll read you this other question.
Gator. I think he's probably hungry. Bad. I'll feed him on the break.
So Nathan Ballenberger says, morning Father Fish, put art sand in Betta tank. Moved his Betta to the community tank. Seems to like it. Is the concept the same with the Bettas? Will they eat infusoria? Do I need to feed him Betta food?
That's a really good question. Yeah, they will eat infusoria. If you've got a pretty good subculture there, microculture, that'll suffice for the Betta, and he'll do really well with that. You can always do blackworms or something as a treat, but generally, again, if you've got a really good microculture in your tank, it'll be in your community tank. It makes it a perfect tank for bettas. So pea puffers too, for that matter. Somebody was talking about pea puffers. Anything that really depends on live food. And bettas depend on live food to really be healthy. The ancillary to that is that Bettas do really well in certain kinds of community tanks. Uh, I'd like to see a Betta in Lee's tank. I think that would be really interesting. If Lee, if you're still with us, get a Betta and put it in your tank. Make it a female if you want, because she'll be able to swim around a little better, and you might have a better comfort level yourself doing that. But I think it would be spectacular in your tank to have a Betta. Um, I like Bettas in community tanks. They typically do well. Now you can't put them in with barbs because they'll get chewed up.
Right.
And you can't put them in with other fish that are going to be aggressive. That won't work at all. But if you've got live bears, tetras, that sort of thing in your community tank, a Betta will generally do beautifully, and they'll really enjoy being in there. So give it a go. A lot of plants. Again, lots of plants. Plants are critical. They provide cover and support for the fish. They give the fish a comfort level. Even if they're not nipping on them, they give the fish a comfort level that allows the fish to behave naturally.
So smallest fish room, I think, realizes you don't want to put in fish that actually dig down into the substrate, but they're wondering if coolie loaches would be okay in the dirted tank.
Coolie loaches are fine. They're the fish that dig into the substrate are fine. Fish that are mountain movers and move the entire substrate from one end of the tank to the other, that's not fine.
Right.
You know, fish like Oscars when they're spawning, or any of the big Central American cichlids, anything that's a pit spawner. Convict cichlids are a pit spawner. Anything that digs down to make a pit in the tank is going to dig all the way to the bottom. You don't want those in a dirted tank. They're just going to make a mess. But anything that digs into the sand a little bit, they never go an inch deep, half an inch tops. A coolie loach will not go. It will keep its nose above the level of the sand. It'll be aware of what's going on in the water column. You know, and fish like that. Cory loaches, Cory catfish. Cories poke around, but they don't go more than a quarter of an inch deep. You know, anything like that is perfectly fine.
Yeah. So Lee's touching back on, he's heard you talk about freezing fertilizer and, you know, pushing it into your substrate, but he's asking about, you know, using the syringe, but it just has to work, or would it leach? But I don't think that the syringe works well, does it? It does leach.
Syringe, I've tried it, and the problem is it displaces as much as it puts in, and you wind up pushing dirt up out of it. So it doesn't seem to work well. If you will use a pair of tweezers, pinch a small ice cube of dirt, and push it all the way down to the bottom, you're not going to be displacing much of anything at all, and that'll work. You just got to do it quickly before it thaws out.
Right. So Brian was asking if you could use dirt from Walmart Garden Center.
I get all of every single product I have in my mix. I buy it at Lowe's Garden Center. Everything. 100%. With the exception of the sand, and only because I buy that from a pool filter store. I get it from the wholesaler, actually. I buy it by the ton. I mean, literally, I buy it by the ton. But yeah, everything you can find. There are a few things you can't find. Worm casings are pretty hard to find in any of the big box stores. They just,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, they don't carry them. It's probably a higher priced item. There's some things like that that are a little harder to get. A garden supply store, a good quality garden supply store, it's really your best bet. I do Lowe's because it's close and I can get pretty much everything I want. But I enjoy trips to the garden supply store very much because I find things there I can't find
Mm-hmm.
anywhere else. And they'll order stuff for me too. I mean, that's where I get worm casings, special ordered if need be.
Okay. This is just a kind of reinforces one of the things you said. But Mr. B CPD says, ask the person working at the fish rack in the big box store if she ever kept a certain fish, and she said she didn't own an aquarium. That kind of goes along with it, right?
So there you have it.
That's right.
So Jeannie's saying Home Depot in Ohio carries worm casings. So
Oh,
you can
okay.
find them. And they're wonderful. It's a wonderful addition to your deep substrate.
So there's a question from, I think it's Thiago. I'm sorry, I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but it says, greetings, Father Fish. I live in a region that the water supply does have a huge amount of phosphate. Results for the plants is lots of algae and they don't grow. What can I do to cope with this?
Um, if they're not growing, it's not because of an excess of phosphates. I assume the plants you're talking about are either rooted or stem plants. There are two things. Number one, I would suggest that you do not have any or adequate nutrition in your substrate. You're depending somehow on the water, and the water cannot feed rooted plants unless you grow them in gravel, in which case you got other problems. You might try Anubias, Java fern, plants that take their nutrition right out of the water column will compete with the algae. See, the fact that you have algae growing in there means algae is, after all, a plant. It is a lower order plant than, for example, Anubias and Java fern or Java moss, even. If you put those in, they will control the growth of the algae because they absorb nutrients better than algae does. So you just have the wrong kind of plants and you don't have nutrition in your substrate. You're depending on it being in the water column. You need to put dirt in the substrate or do something at this point in the game to get nutrition in there. Press a couple of root tabs deep into it, right down to the bottom. Um, to try to get some nutrition. Freeze some cubes of dirt and press them in. Empty the tank and start over again. Whatever. Um, the water quality is not the issue. It's the way you've got your tank set up. That's the issue.
Um, Father Fish, Nathan Gallenberger was wondering if you would drop the link, if he could come up and show you the Betta in the tank he's talking about.
Oh, you bet.
That possibility? Okay. And then I'm just reading Kareen's statement. She says, I followed your advice about the wild mud. from the river 3 months ago, and even I was scared at first, but I did it. I never had pneumonia problems since day one. So her tank's been great. From your advice. And
Well, yeah.
and then go ahead. Then she has a question to go along with it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you're bringing living matter into your tank, microculture into your tank, then that creates the environment that your tank needs in order to be able to thrive. So just never be afraid of doing that. That's really what the system is all about. And it's kind of what I said yesterday. There are two ways to keep fish. There are two philosophies. One is to spend money at the drop of a hat. Every time you think about the tank, pull out your wallet. That's one approach to keeping fish. To solve every problem with money, with buying something, with equipment, with supplies, with this, that, or the other thing. And that works up to a point. It is a form of Russian roulette, because eventually you put the wrong thing in and it blows up. Or, on the other hand, you can start with a natural system that is able to balance and take care of itself. And that's all of the world I'm teaching, is how to keep a tank like your grandmother used to keep her tank, healthy and happy. Not like some clerk at the local big box store tells you to keep it, because they don't know what they're talking about. Here's Nathan.
Oh, can you just? And her question was, the green brown that you get down on the front of the glass. She's wondering if it's bad because it doesn't look good, but
if you don't like it, stick your finger or a net or a pencil or something right up against the glass and move it back and forth, and it'll disappear. Yeah. It'll look perfectly clean. Just get some, just do that. You'll be amazed. It's a miracle.
It doesn't hurt anything, but if you don't like the way it looks, you can fix it that way. Yeah.
Nathan.
Hi, Nathan.
Hey, guys. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good to see you.
Good to see you, too.
How are you?
I'm good. The 55-gallon is finally done, and it's looking pretty amazing for your standards, I think. So,
well, let's take a look.
Yeah, let me figure out this camera thing again. How do I flip it?
You do know how to do this.
Yes.
Right.
He knows how to do it.
Yes, yeah.
I know he does. Here we go.
There we go.
Wow.
So that's where I am right now. I got a big anacris.
Nice.
Coming there.
That looks good, Nate.
Bacopa, Temple compacta, dwarf Sagittarius, dwarf baby tears. Let's see, Reapins.
A lot of baby stuff. Yeah, that's good. That'll all grow up.
Yeah. So what I got in here is just guppies, Cory cats, and 4 juvenile angelfish, and that's what I was asking. Like, this is established enough to where I think that guy should be okay.
What are we looking at? Oh, there he is. Yeah, he'll be fine. He'll be real happy in there.
Okay. Because the problem that I was facing with when I was feeding, I don't feed fish food a lot. I maybe do it every once or twice a month, just because of the protein and stuff in the food itself. But every time I put the beta food in there, I was faced with a problem that all the other fish would just swarm it and take it all from him. And I'm like, well, I wonder if that's okay or not. So
your Betta is not likely to find a lot of food in there.
I didn't think so.
Yeah.
And you're going to need to feed him.
Yeah.
But again, don't feed him. You can take him out and feed him if you want to do that.
Yeah.
You want to get like worms or Daphne culture, something like that, and put them in a bowl and feed them separately. If you do that, well, once or twice a week, that'll be adequate, and that'll keep them going. And then Put Daphne in there. If you should be able to get some Daphne culture out of your creek there. Do what you can. Find what you can. Wild. The tank can use more plants. They're going to grow in.
Yeah, I chose to let me get this back around here. I chose to purchase like smaller plants or seeds, so it's not by any means ready yet because I got a little lily bulb back here sprouting,
yeah.
Right.
and he's gonna be pretty big. So
Yeah, it's going to all grow in, and
Oh,
it'll be fine.
okay, so it won't hurt him to take him out, like it won't stress him out too much to feed him.
No, not at all, and
No.
he'll benefit from it.
Okay.
Just
Cool.
think about to feed him. That's because he'll eat right away. He doesn't much care where he is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Betta's adapt to their environment instantly. They don't dart around saying, "Where am I? I'm lost." They don't do that. They're, "Oh well, hello, I've been here before."
Gotcha.
So, yeah, everything is normal for a Betta.
Okay.
They're very chill fish.
Yeah, I've found that out. This is basically only the second beta that I've had, and I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna put him in the community tank. So you aren't kidding though. I went to the store yesterday and bought some art sand, vase sand to be exact. And if you do not wet that stuff, it gets everywhere in your tank.
Ain't it a bugger?
Oh my gosh. I was like, this is terrible. Like, that's why I moved him, because I'm like, it's so cloudy in here. I'm afraid for his safety.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And, it was horrible. But
Yeah, it's pretty, but boy, it's hard to work with.
it is.
It
It really,
actually
I've done 2 or 3 water changes already, and it's still cloudy.
Yeah, you want to stick it in a bucket or something and just beat it to death.
Yeah,
with water.
that's what it came to.
Yeah.
I put it in a little 2-gallon bucket and just sat there and stirred it with a stick.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
Beat it to death.
Yeah, I did. I beat the crap out of it. But
Aquatic News, welcome.
But where'd you go? Yeah, that's basically all I wanted. I'll let you
Thank
guys
you,
get back to
Nathan.
I'll let you guys get back to your questions. That's the update.
Hey, listen, when you get it, we'd like to see your creek again sometime.
Yes.
That was a wonderful trip, and we got a lot of new people in who would love that.
Yeah, I'll.
Oh yeah.
I need to. I need to communicate with either Joey or Mary. I haven't heard from Mary in a while. I think she's doing okay, but as soon as I figure out what the schedule is going to be here the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'll shoot her a text, or I'll put it in the chat here one morning and give you guys a date.
Sounds great.
And we'll go over there.
Perfect. That'll be fun.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for coming.
Bye, Nathan. Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye.
Super guy. Thank you, Nathan.
Oh yes, and his tank's looking really, really good.
Yeah, it does. Fine. Yep.
Yeah. You had a quick question, and I can't remember who said, but they were wondering. I think they're storing some plants till they get something going, and they're wondering what temperature they can store their plants at till they get their tank going. Yeah.
Doesn't make a big difference.
Right. And then
room temperature, whatever your room temperature is fine.
Okay. And then Liz, King of Hearts, she says, my electric blue ram is 3 years old in a community tank, is deconditioning, face drop, and slim down. I fed high quality, dry, and frozen foods. He seems to eat well. Is it just age? So I think he's just overall declining.
Yeah, probably. Who was that?
Liz, King of Hearts at 9:45.
Oh, okay. Way back up. Yeah, I'm sure.
Okay.
Somebody else was just talking about feeding. once every other day. Here it is. Kareen Camara.
Mm-hmm.
I feed my fish every other day once. I want to feed once a month. When I go 2 days, of course, guppy fry don't look so good. Well, the guppy fry are not going to look good. You're absolutely right. Any fry need to eat every day. So there's a caveat. Everything has caveats. Keep that in mind. Yeah, it's all gray. Nothing's black and white. Um, you cannot get away with feeding baby fish once a month. They will be dead
Right.
by day 3.
Right.
Day 2, probably. Day 3, certainly. They have to eat every day. They don't have any reserves. All of their reserves are going into building their bodies. So they've
Mm-hmm.
got to have steady diet and nutrition every day. There are lots of people who feed their baby fish 4 and 5 and 6 times a day. If you're doing something like that, the best way to do it, of course, is to have them in a tank by themselves, bare bottom that you can clean and keep that water clean constantly. But that's a whole different protocol, taking care of baby fish than maintaining a balanced aquarium. You can do it with a few, if you have a few babies in your tank and they're surviving, um, because you have a lot of cover, then but half of the time they're going to get eaten. So, it doesn't always work. Lee's tank is a case in point. He has live bears exclusively, mostly platies and mollies, now guppies. And he has babies in there. And the babies do pretty well because there's nothing in there that is especially predaceous. Uh, they'll they'll eat a baby opportunistically, but they're not chasing around looking for them and chasing them down to eat them. So the babies are able to survive. And he has enough plants and old enough, well established enough tank that the babies are able to find food. So that's kind of a different matter. You can do it, but if you notice your babies are going down, then you really ought to consider setting up a system just for them where you can take care of them quite apart from the rest of your fish.
Okay. Lee had a question, Father Fish. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So Lee had a question. He says, Lewis said I should get a female Betta. I was wondering about 2 for company, or am I being sentimental?
Yes and yes. How did we lose? Oh, I see.
Well, that's why I wasn't sure if you could hear me, because you've been on the screen by yourself since Nathan
The whole time I never looked at the screen.
Yeah, so I was just like, maybe I completely dropped off and you can't hear me, but then you said you can hear me, so I'm like, okay, we're fine. So, okay, I mean, he has a big tank, so he should be able to get away with adding a few females.
Yeah, not going to be a problem.
Yeah, and that shouldn't.
Paul and Tara, some of my mystery snails have developed pinholes in their tanks. What is the cure? There is no cure. If they got a pinhole, they can't go back and heal it.
Right.
What the best you can hope for is that bacteria doesn't get in there and cause an infection and kill it. You can try putting a spot of super glue over the hole. Take it out, put a spot of super glue on it. That'll work, and it'll actually work pretty well. You might clean it a bit first to make sure there's no algae around the hole so the super glue will be able to adhere. But that'll work, and that'll be pretty effective. But they don't have any way to heal a broken shell, if you will. You can do that yourself. Now, it could be parasites. There are parasites that bore into the shell of a snail. So try to be conscious of what's going on. See if you can figure out why If it's a bunch of pinholes, just one, whatever. But you can use super glue to seal them, and that'll keep infection from getting. It'll keep bacteria from getting in there and infecting the body of the snail.
Yeah. Amber, Big City Bed, is saying, she doesn't think that the two female Bettas is a good idea because they should be in a larger group because the two of them will just fight. Which, I mean, is a thing, but he has a pretty large tank. That's a big tank, right?
Yeah, it is, and there are an awful lot of fish in there. It's not
so
like they by themselves. Try it and see. If they do, then you can always get a third one.
Yeah. But I know it's a big tank. They can get away from each other.
Yeah, I would suggest one. I mean, control your sentimentality for at least a day. Put one in and see how she does. And then if you must put another one in. Pay attention to Holly's concern. Be aware that there might be aggression. You'll be able to get away with it because you got about 100 fish in there. So they probably will have a hard time finding each other.
That's what I'm thinking. And then he's got a lot of plants and they can get away. So, I mean, like you said, if it doesn't work out, add more. Add more to the point where they get along.
Lee says he feeds his fry.
Yeah. Chris, this right now is kind of room temperature. It sits at about 73, 74 degrees, this goldfish tank. But they can go colder, goldfish can, or they can even be a little warmer if they needed to.
Yeah, Nicholas and Lee are both talking about feeding microscopic food to their babies, which is a good way to deal with that issue.
Yeah.
Kareem Camero is reading about some fish that can be without filtration. It's not the fish, it's the tank. If your aquarium is set up to be able to sustain itself, then you don't need to be pulling things out of the tank all the time. If you're creating a self-sustaining tank, that means the tank is able to deal with the waste that's being produced. It goes down through the sand into the substrate, gets broken down, and is cycled back up as nutrition for plants. If that's the way your tank is set up, filtration has little genuine significance. More important may be water circulation. I use sponge filters. You can use a hang on the back merely to circulate the water, to keep it flowing a little bit. That occurs naturally, but if you've got a fair amount of fish in there, you don't want to depend on that because the water has to be able to reach the surface in order to release CO2 and exchange it for oxygen. So creating water flow assists in that process. That's the main reason for doing it. So it's really not a matter of filtering for the fish. It's a matter of filtering because you don't have a tank set up that's able to function as a natural environment. Or you're putting more biomass in there than it can handle. And so you need a filter to pull some of that out. I usually will use a sponge filter in a tank anyway, just to be on the safe side. But I don't take them out and clean them more than once every 6 months or so.
Mm-hmm. Against the flow, says Father Fish, I have a 55-gallon tank of guppies that is totally green water. Is it beneficial for the fish? How could I get it to clear up?
Add plants. Just put plants in there. The plants will take up the nutrition and will starve out the single cell algae. What do you?
Sorry, what? Oh, I'm
What is-
scrolling. Sorry, I'm scrolling on my iPad. Sorry.
It's funny.
I'm waving to you. My dog Bogey came and sat in my lap, so I'm using my left hand instead of my right. Sorry. I'll scroll with this hand. You won't see it.
I don't care. Brian, it's better when I buy plants to be in pots or no pots. I don't think it matters. Buy the nicest plants you can find. Take them out of the pots when you get them home because they don't have nutrition in those pots. All that is wool that is fertilized by being in an aquaponics system. You don't have an aquaponic system, so you can't grow your plants in the pot. You got to take them out of the pot and put them in the substrate.
Mhm. I'm reading.
Yeah, and Larry D agreed.
Yeah. No.
J Dog solved all his algae problems with Java Fern and Christmas moss. That's it. Absolutely right.
And you know what?
Yeah. What? What?
J Dog also asked a question earlier. Sorry. He asked a question earlier. He wanted to know what the name was of the biologist that you visited in Florida. Was it Andres?
Oh yeah. Right. Andre Ryan. Yeah.
Yeah.
He has a fish farm in Sarasota.
Okay. I just remembered that
Melissa
question.
Horn is now blue. Good morning, Melissa. Will the
And we've
system
had
work with goldfish?
come in. We've had a lot of new people come in, Father Fish.
Yeah, Melissa, yes, the system will work for goldfish. And you can find plants that the goldfish will not eat. Joey knows a lot more about that. You want to talk about that for a minute? I
What,
need
that
to make
goldfish wall? Um,
yeah, I need to make a pit stop.
okay. I
Shout
found
away.
that the best plants for that are Anubias and then in the larger Anubias, not like the petite ones. And swords, the heavier stem sword plants are the best ones. Father Fish, I think, says you can use Vallisneria. I have not personally tried that, but I think he uses it in his tanks and says he's pretty successful with that. I don't do a lot of plants in my goldfish tanks. I do it when they're babies. I have plants in there for them when they're babies, but as they get bigger, like these guys, I don't typically have a lot of plants in there, but it's for that reason that they tend to eat at them. And it's not that they necessarily go over and get on a plant and just eat it, but the constant kind of biting at the plant. And when you have a bunch of big fish going by and they all test it 40 times a day, after a while it breaks them down, regardless. So, but anyway, like I have a few of the larger leaf Anubias in here, and they're holding up so far. And I think maybe they don't taste that great, so they don't bother them too much. Anyway, and obviously I don't have, this is not a dirted tank because I'm not concentrating so much on the plant growth. But you can do it. I put my babies in dirted tanks. And if you get the substrate thick enough, because the goldfish don't really dig down in, they go down like maybe a quarter inch to a half an inch. So you can actually have a big tank that's dirted. And if I was going to try to grow swords in the substrate or Vallisneria, I think I would try dirt in it, even with the goldfish. So, anywho, so this is scrolling. I don't know if that helped you or answered your question. So, and I'm going to be looking for a question for him for when he comes back. And yes, if you could hit the thumbs up. I can't see how we're doing on that because I would have to I'd have to click off and come back. So I'm not going to do that. But But if you could do that for father fish, that would be awesome. And yeah, see, Chris Trapp agrees, says that his goldfish had left the valid scenario alone. So, yeah, I think that would be a good one for you as well. So, anyway, I was just kind of looking for a question for when you came back. Oh, Lee's saying give your fish minced garlic once a month. But you know what? I was thinking about that the other day because we talk about garlic all the time, father fish. But so, and you and I kind of talk back and forth about you, or let's say treating for parasites. But if you were using fresh garlic to treat a fish that you thought had parasites, how often and how long would you feed the garlic to, if you're going that natural route to rid it of parasites?
Gee,
Huh?
I don't know.
Oh, you said gee. I thought you said cheap. I'm like, what does that have to do with it? Gee, yeah. I feel like
I think it depends on what your. It depends on why you think the fish has parasites. In other words,
okay.
what's the presenting condition? What
In my
leads you to believe that's true?
in my case, I have had some goldfish come in that are, sunken in and very thin, and and they have that wasting sort of look, and I know it's parasites. So of course I have a medicated food that I use. But if you weren't going to use a medicated food, I don't think one feeding of garlic is going to do it. So how, I do a food for 3 days. How long do you think
Yeah,
you would do a
no,
garlic
I
to
would
treat
do it
it?
for a week probably,
Okay. Yeah. We've never really
and then,
touched on the length.
and then I would do it prophylactically, probably once a week thereafter,
Okay. Just to kind of keep them off.
until I
Sort of
really
like,
was confident. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, so for instance, there's daily wormers that you can give horses or something. So this would be sort of like, if you did it once a week, it'd be kind of like a maintenance thing.
yeah,
I
exactly.
feel like, yeah. Okay. So I just realized we never talked about the length before. We always talk about feed them garlic, but yeah, how long?
Right.
Okay.
Oh, here
Um,
we go. Devil Lucy, look at this.
yes, I just
3
saw
weeks
that.
ago, at 10:11. 3 weeks
Yep.
ago, I started a 15-gallon aquarium. All this time, I'm struggling with cloudy water. It looks like there's tiny white powder swimming in it. Too small to filter it through a sponge filter. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Anybody know what that is?
Well,
I know it.
I was gonna say paramecium, but
Yes,
no.
exactly.
Oh, okay. I'm like, no, I'm wrong. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. Um, yeah, it's paramecium culture. And it's happening because you have a very high level of nutrition in the aquarium.
Hmm.
There's something that's feeding that paramecium. You try to get a handle on what it is that's doing that. Basically, the paramecium are keeping the aquarium from crashing. And by crashing, I mean preventing bacteria from taking over and killing everything by consuming the nutrition prior to bacteria being able or needing to do it. The whole issue is you've got an excess of nutrition in the tank. You need to figure out why. Are you overfeeding? That's the obvious one. Do you have dirt exposed to the surface? That's another one. There are a number of things that can cause that. Try to get a handle on what's causing it.
Hmm. Yeah, you had the same thing. People guessing bacteria blooms, things like that.
Have a
Um,
lid after water change. Yeah, add 2 inches of sand, and that's
Yeah.
going to clear up the problem. The problem is in your substrate. Just add clean new sand to the tank, 2 inches deep, and it'll go away.
They're also
Yeah, put a
asking,
lot of big fish in there. They'll love to eat it. It'll be great food.
right. Smallest fisherman is also asking, Father Fish, you said best food for fish is fish. How do you mean? Should I feed some fish to my fish?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. A good way to do that is to buy a fish or a fish head or whatever at the grocery, puree it, put it in a flat pack like a sandwich bag, freeze it, and then break off little pieces to feed to the fish. You can also go out in the ditch and catch fish and put them in the blender. You might if you're a bachelor, you can get away with this. If you have um, somebody you're living with in the house who uses the blender for smoothies, you might want to get your own blender.
Yeah, I'm not sure that's gonna wash out. I'm not sure what.
Best,
I'm wait-
best treatment for
yeah.
worms. Where is this? I lost it. Best food for where is that?
I don't know because I'm looking at something different.
Ultramagnetic. When was the last time you went to Fish Hatchery Road?
Right.
Yeah, we used to go up there all the time. Oh golly, I've not been there in I don't know how long.
Well, you've been in Florida 30 years, right?
Yeah, I was on Fish Hatchery Road about 20 years ago. I think that's the last time I was there.
Mm. Um, I had a question. Where'd it go?
Oh, here we go, T-Bone. Went to
Oh,
the pet shop, explained to them about my neons with the white spots. They said there's nothing you can do about it. Cannot get medication here except Melafix. Melafix is completely worthless.
it smells good though.
Yeah, it smells good.
Yeah, it smells
So
good.
catch the fish, take them out, and apply. Try to go to the drugstore and buy merthiolate or mercurochrome, and use that and put it directly on the spot. And that'll cure it. That will cure the problem. You may need to do it twice, but that's going to get rid of it. It's a bacteria. You need to kill the bacteria.
Yeah.
The fungus growing on the dead flesh, the fungus is not the issue. That's the white spot you see is the fungus. It's the underlying bacteria that's the problem. You need to kill the bacteria. Merthiolate or mercurochrome will kill the bacteria. You can try. You can try to put some kind of antibiotic ointment on it, but that's going to be really tough because it's a tiny little fish.
Yeah.
And this is more like a cream or a lotion.
Yeah.
The other stuff, if you can buy liquid methylene blue at the pet shop, if they sell methylene blue, somebody type that out for them.
Mm-hmm.
Methylene
Well, I'm
blue,
not sure.
you can do the same thing with that. Go ahead, Joey.
Well, I'm just not sure what they can get in Australia if they can get a medication like that. You know, it's different in different countries. That's all.
Yeah. Methylene blue should be pretty easy to get, but I don't know.
Okay, Ladessa has a question. She says, found a wiggling worm in my new tank after a water change. I thought it was a detritus worm, but got rid of it anyway. Should I have left it alone?
There is almost zero likelihood that it would cause a problem.
Right.
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure it's a detritus worm. I'm sure it's something living down in the sand that's eating waste. Um, you erred on the side of caution. That
Right.
rarely is a serious mistake. Um, it's always good to be careful. It's
Yes.
unlikely it would be something that would attach itself to the fish.
Oh, somebody's asking, I think, for what you were talking about for treating those neons. My sister says, would tea tree oil work? Could you use tea tree
Yeah, you
oil
can
on a
try it,
worm?
but I don't think it's not
Yeah.
adequately disinfectant.
Yeah.
If you can
That's what
get it in a strong enough solution, if you can
Yeah.
get it pure, then it might work, but it might also kill the fish.
Right.
I've got a customer here poking around looking
Okay.
for some. Let me
Okay.
go deal with them. Let's do a. What time is it?
Let's take a little break. Yeah. We'll come back for a few minutes if you want to
Okay,
after
we'll
that.
take a break. Yeah. Let me see if I can find a tune here. Let's see. Here we go.
All right. I'm going to go get more coffee.
Hey, try and sort this one out. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that can be. Let's talk about fish. Fish. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. Instrumental break. Let's talk about fish, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. 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 Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk about
All right. Joey ain't here yet. All by myself. Here we are again. Let's see what's going on in the chat. Yes, Chase.
This wire cage that's next to the communication cage, how much is that?
Oh, the
Screen.
Repticage
Yeah.
50. Yeah. Oh, what am I trying to do here? Trying to get there. Plants grow in groups, true, but why? World's smallest fish shrimp. I think it's because they like each other's company. Think of it this way. If you have a grove of trees, trees like any other plant tend to create the kind of environment that they prefer, which is a good way to think about what a good way to think about plants. Um, a monoculture, in a that's part of a macroculture, will at its core will have created an environment that is a soil condition that is uniquely appropriate to its needs. Aspen trees are a good example. Aspen grow in groves, and they do so because they create a soil condition that's unique to their needs, that just meets their needs perfectly. So as you get on the periphery of this growth, they're either expanding or they're contracting. They're either expanding because they're able to impact the soil with the conditions that of which they're needful, or they're not. And if they're not, it's because they're in competition with something at the periphery that is controlling and constraining them. So it's the same with any kind of plant. You know, they do best where they're able to be in control of their little micro environment. Think of it that way. It's a nice way to kind of understand what's going on. Joey.
Yes, I'm reading.
Anything
and, look, and looking for questions. And some things aren't really questions. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have to read them, and
Yeah, is it true that Molly's a
questions,
really good algae?
Yes.
Mollies are good algae eaters, absolutely.
Yes, they are. Yep. My wife is always okay.
Fishing. Is that Frostberg? Is that what he's typing? Oostberg.
I don't know.
Frostberg, I would guess.
Okay, Nathan. Okay, what is?
Are there strings of guppies that will never breed true? Yes.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've bought some of the high-priced ones that don't breed true.
Some little ones.
Oh, we do?
In the top right tank on this side.
Okay.
There are two.
On the...
Yeah, the pyramid.
Yeah.
The first tank on the top on this side. There's two of them in it. They're about that size.
Okay.
They're 15 each.
Okay, so I'm trying to. Were you on a question? I was trying to make sense of this question from Betta.
Yeah, I was on one that was curious.
Okay, you do that, and then I'll.
Sam Krager, are there strains of guppies that will never breed true? You know what's interesting about that? Are there strains of guppies that will never breed true? No, they're not strains of guppies that will never breed true, because a strain of guppies, by definition, is a strain that breeds true. We'll go into that a little more deeply.
I was going to say, but I've purchased expensive ones that don't breed true, but that's because of obviously the practices.
Because they're not pure strain.
Right.
They're not pure strain.
But they're selling them as a pure strain. Yeah.
Right. So if they're not breeding true, then they're not a pure strain.
Exactly.
So I've added the word pure there to distinguish. Obviously, a guppy from a pure strain can breed with a guppy, a female, from a completely different batch. And they're going to throw something. There will be babies coming out of that match that will not be true to either group. But pure strain, if I understand the import of your question, you're asking, is it possible for a pure strain of guppies that is bred true for generations to suddenly throw a fish that is not pure strain, that is not a duplicate of its parents? And the answer is yes, it's possible, because genetics is a very complicated thing. And there can be a gene way back from 100 generations ago that suddenly, for whatever reason, pops up. That's what a morph is. MORPH. A morph. A morph is a variation from the norm. If you think of it this way, fish that are growing in the wild, you pick a fish, any fish, Oscars, growing in the wild. If they're in a given locale, they're growing in that given locale. It might be like a 20-mile radius in the wild. They're growing in that area. And they are like the trees we were talking about down in the core of that community. They are duplicating over and over, generation after generation. You go back there 50 years later, you find exactly the same fish that you found 50 years earlier. And then all of a sudden, something pops up that's different. So what you've got is a pure strain that is growing naturally in that environment, surrounded by a large enough environment of pure strain to be able to remain relatively, virtually unchanged. That's a pure strain occurring in nature. There are lots of those. That's basically what happens in nature. Is that the fish will will develop in a specific region, maybe or creek, maybe in just one spot, and they'll be in that spot, and they'll be the same generation after generation after generation. No variation at all. Pure strain. And then all of a sudden, out of absolutely nowhere, comes something different. The difference might be minor, it might be major, but that difference is a function of a gene somewhere in that strain going back that has suddenly popped up and achieved dominance for whatever reason, in whatever way it happened. That's how we get different strains of fish. Let me give you an example. The discus. Up until about 20 years ago, discus varied only depending upon the region they were collected in. They would breed and they would be the same. Now there were crosses, interbreeds going on, people taking them from different areas, breeding them together and getting mixes. But basically these were all relatively the same. They all had relatively the same pattern, the same color forms. So there was a breeder in Thailand, a discus breeder. He bred millions of discus. He had a friend visiting him on his farm one day who was looking at all the millions of baby fish he had, and he saw one that was different. And he bought that fish and he took it back home and he bred it to some others, and he started to get something very unique that has turned into pigeon bloods, creamsicles, the white discus, the solid blue discus, all of the variations we have today, all of these solid color discus, all of these remarkably colored discus that bear little or no resemblance to the wild caught discus. Those all came out of one single fish, one morph, one oddball that got thrown into the mix out of literally millions of fish. So that's a long, protracted answer to what really was not a simple question.
And that's what Sam put in there. And I thought this was an easy question. So, Corrine asked a question. She says, you talked about methylate for bacteria. What is a natural or cheap medication that you use for other possible diseases?
Gee. Well, you can use, excuse me. There are two things I use, and I'm hoping my brain's going to work here. Epsom salts is one. I find Epsom salts has curative properties. I think it's probably the magnesium that's doing it. They're providing some antibacterial curative properties. The benefit of Epsom salts is you can put it in the water column. I do not overdose with it because I do not want to really increase salt in the water. All salt does is slow down the fish's metabolism. But the other things that are in with Epsom salts, like magnesium, I think do help. The other thing is H2O2, peroxide. You can buy peroxide super strength. It's like 20%. It is a very powerful and very effective disinfectant. One so effective that it's really easy to overdose with it and kill everything. So you have to be extremely cautious with peroxide. But those are two very simple, inexpensive medications, if you will, that can be used effectively to treat fish. You want to be cautious with them. Get into a conversation over on Discord with Stephen about it. He'll have some things to say about both of them, I'm sure, that'll be helpful.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I just had another question. I don't know where it went, but Lee has a question. He just said, I have male guppies that I can only describe as scissor tails. None of the original males had them. What is that all about?
Well, it's the same thing.
Or are they?
It's genetics. It's just genetics popping out. You know, that's all the world is.
Yes.
It's not because they performed some arcane ritual over their progeny and sold their souls to the Satan of fish. Nothing like that. It's just genetics.
It's just, I mean that's how. But that right there is how new strains are started. Like you said, if you like that, Lee, and I mean it's already out there and it exists. But if you like what you're getting, pull those and work on your own thing on the side. That's how it starts.
One thing to remember, the genetics in a given fish, only some of those genes are dominant. There are many, many, many more genes that are not dominant, such that when you breed that fish to a female that has a similar subdominant gene and they match, that may become dominant. And so suddenly you've got something showing up that did not show up in either of the recent history of either of those fish, but that was there nonetheless as a recessive gene.
Mm-hmm. And Ultra Magic is asking, Father Fish, could you make a video on how to repair a heater? You've talked about it.
I need to do that. Yeah, I can,
Okay.
and I will. I'll do that. That's, you know what? I'm looking for something to do unique with videos. And why don't I just start doing that? I really haven't done that kind of thing. I really haven't done
No, you
uh,
have.
equipment maintenance or any of that sort of thing. Uh, and I got lots of
Right.
tricks to the trade. I'll talk to Tom. We'll get into that.
Okay. All right. I'm just scrolling, looking if there's anything that's just
James had
coming.
playing with Guppy Genetics.
Oreo says.
It still is. Still is, James. Go ahead, James.
Yeah. So, just Oreo saying to me, those goldfish look hungry or just hyper. Well, I mean, goldfish are always hungry, always hungry. But the hyper, the swimming around is good. That means they're healthy. They're swimming around. And Vitabor, Vitabor asked before. Yeah, they're asking that question.
Well, genetics again. Genetics can have everything to do with it.
And species. I mean, guppies don't live as long as, angelfish. They just don't,
Yeah.
So there's some of that in there as well. Like you said, good, good genetics help.
It's mostly, it's a lot of things.
Right.
Here's the thing that's critical. Fish do not age the way mammals do. Fish don't get old and develop the same sorts of pathologies that mammals do. They simply aren't wired that way. Fish die from other reasons. It may be environmental. It may be genetic. The genetics of it have to do with the fish's ability to withstand stress. And stress comes in a myriad of forms. I lost a fish. Here's a good example. I had a fish came in the other day. It's a beautiful male red-based snook about a foot long. Been looking for one for ages. Exquisite fish. I put it in my 500 with a group of other large fish, one of which was a big female. Immediately, a Texas cichlid and a flowerhorn male, both males, went after it. So I took them out immediately before there was any damage at all. I thought it would be fine. I come in the next morning, I find the fish burrowed down under a log, dead. The fish was so frightened because it had never. I checked back with the person I got it from. It had grown out by itself. It spent its entire life by itself. It had no experience in dealing with other fish. So all of a sudden, here's these two other big guys coming at it, threatening it. Totally freaked it out. Totally. To the point where it committed suicide. Whether it did that deliberately or whether it did it incidentally, it did it. It killed itself. It hit itself so deeply that it could not breathe, could not survive. So I don't know what that's an example of exactly. Um, Environment, uh, um, what the condition which it was in which it was raised, the the fact it was raised alone, genetics. I don't know,
Right.
but it's certainly an example of a fish dying of its own volition, essentially, by virtue of being in an environment that it was not prepared to deal with. And I was upset, you know. I mean, I can get another one, I guess,
Yeah.
but it was one that had grown out in a tank, so I was especially. Are they coming back? Okay.
Um, no, can I answer a quick question, Father Fish?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Melissa, I just used an Clear 110 on this goldfish tank, and I do feed a variety of food. And nothing specific. And then Father Fish, Fantastic Fish Friends is asking if there are any shrimp that are larger than Neocaridines but just as colorful.
Um, Probably not, at least not that have come into the hobby yet. There are saltwater shrimp that are larger if you want to get into saltwater and colorful. There are crayfish, lobsters, crayfish that are colorful. It's a completely different kind of animal, but not completely different. I'm not aware of any other. Well, let's see. There are some. There are shrimp that get 3 to 4 inches. They're not particularly colorful, however. And I'm trying to think of what they're called. I can't think what they're called. But they get bigger. They're prawn, which get very
Yeah, I'm
big.
trying to think.
Prawn are relatively colorful. What are these things called? They're filter feeders.
Is there? I don't know my shrimp very well. There's bamboo shrimp. Bamboo shrimp are
Yeah,
not
that's what I
that
was
colorful, but
thinking
they're
of.
bigger, right?
Yeah, bamboo shrimp. Right,
Okay.
right. Thank you, Misfit,
Bamboo.
very much.
Yeah. I mean, some are colorful, like anything. If you stand there and look at the tank, you'll see a couple that are prettier than others.
Yeah, yeah. Misfit, reptiles and aquatics. Thank you very much for the
Oh,
$10
thank you.
super
Thank you, man.
sticker. Means more than you know. It is a big deal for us to get this level of support. Thank you
Yeah.
very, very much. Yeah, Susan is saying bamboo shrimp. Chevy Fish is saying prawn.
Chevy just said bamboo shrimp. Well, then she said bamboo shrimp too. So yeah, I was like, that's the only larger one I know personally is bamboo shrimp. I'm not
Fantastic
a
is
big shrimp
talking
person.
about flower shrimp. Don't know what flower shrimp are. Um,
Ain't either.
TJ is saying Australia has very large freshwater shrimp. Yeah, they're prawn, I guess. There are a lot of prawn,
Yeah, and Sam Pryor saying,
big, long,
yeah,
skinny claws.
yeah, the bamboo shrimp can maybe get to 3 inches. I don't know. That's a good sized shrimp. Um, and do you want to do like one more question? Kareem's asking if you've ever attempted to acclimate guppies for a saltwater tank.
No, I've not.
I
I
personally have
have kept
not.
guppies in brackish.
I mean, yeah,
Molly's
brackish is one
Molly's
thing, and
in brackish
I mean,
to
if you
begin
want, yeah, mollies could go, but I don't know about guppies going all the way to saltwater.
with. Yeah,
It would take steps. I don't think you'd just take them, and
yeah, it would take
it would
generations.
definitely take some work if that was your goal. Exactly. If that was your goal, I don't know why it would be, but if it was, it would. You're right. It would take generations of raising them in saltier water.
Yeah, and why bother? Brian Is the putty wood all right to use, and if so, do I have to boil it? Let me just deal with this whole issue of boiling driftwood. I never boil driftwood, and that's because I never try to use green so-called driftwood. Driftwood has a very specific meaning to me. Driftwood to me means wood that has not been growing for years, not days or weeks or months, but years. It is a hardwood, not a softwood, that has either been in water or on the ground for so long that there is nothing pertaining to its life as a tree that continues to exist other than its structure. In other words, all of the sap is utterly gone, completely devoid. There are no growing tips, no nothing in it that has anything to do with being alive. It has been eaten through and throughout. It has been burned by the sun. It has been drenched by the water. It has been eaten through thoroughly by insects, so that all that is left is the husk, the dead husk of what was once a tree. That is driftwood. Nothing else is driftwood. Everything else is going to foul your tank. Driftwood does not need to be boiled because it is already as cooked as it can possibly get. The only thing you can do at that point is kill the bacteria and small life that's living in it. And why in the world would you want to do that? You don't want to put sterile in your tank. Do not ever think of your tank as a sterile environment. If that's your goal, God bless you on your way. You're going to kill every fish you put in your tank. And if it doesn't die today, it'll die tomorrow. Talking about fish's lifespan, it's got a whole lot to do with its environment. Pistol shrimp, talking about that's a saltwater one.
Yeah, I was looking at that, and I was wondering if that might be the last thing you want to touch on, because we're almost at 2 hours.
Okay.
So if you
Chevy
wanna
said she had a
touch on
guppy live as an adult in saltwater.
Yep.
Started as
Saw that.
food, but survived. Yeah. Stranger things have happened. Yeah, when a large river meets the sea, you get an expansive brackish. Yeah, that's where the brackish fish come from.
Yeah.
All righty. Yeah, if it's releasing tannins, then it is not cured. It is not, for my terms, it is not driftwood. I would leave that out in the sun or put it in the bucket for a year before I would use it.
Mm-hmm.
Anything with tannins in it is still bleeding, if you will. It still contains some of the natural life force. May not be enough for it to grow, but it's enough for it to, it's still residual plant life force, plant blood, if you will. All right, are we down to it here? I guess so.
I think so. I mean, I know on my end, I've got some business things I got to go take care of.
Right.
So
Let's see. Let me get a
I got people
tune up.
blowing at my phone.
All right. Yeah, we went a little long, didn't we?
Yeah. It's okay. I mean, we were obviously still answering questions, but it's like at this point, I got like 3 things I got to deal with. So
Let's talk about fish,
What happened?
baby. Let's talk about you and me. Let's talk
Bye-bye, all.
about all the good things and the bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's
Sam
talk
Krieger,
about
thank
fish.
you, Sam,
Fish.
very much. Appreciate it.
Yes,
Fish.
Sam
Let's talk
Krieger.
about you
Albert
and
DeBoer,
me.
hello,
Let's talk
Albert.
about all the
Nice
good
to
things
see
and the
you.
bad things that may be. Let's talk about fish. Let's talk about fish. Fish.
All right. Bye, all. Take care. Nice to be with you all.
Bye, everyone.
See you today, Wednesday. We will be back in the morning. Take care for now. Bye-bye. Love you.